My parents and sister kicked me off a cruise I had financed, then charged $5,800 to my credit card. Now they're facing eviction. It all started on a Caribbean cruise. My parents declared, "We've arranged your ferry home. We'll sail on without you." My sister, Lila, smirked, and her husband, Mark, called me stingy, so I walked away. 3 days later, karma hit hard. I had been dreaming of this moment for months. After landing a promotion at my tech company, I decided to treat my family to a Caribbean cruise, a rare opportunity to swap our usual holiday squabbles for turquoise waves and steel drumbeats. I had covered 60% of the cost myself. Spacious cabins, snorkeling trips, and even a gourmet dining package were all part of the deal. The remaining expenses were split between my parents, my older sister Lila, her husband Mark, and our quiet uncle, Tom. It wasn't cheap, nearly $8,000 from my savings, but I figured it was worth it to see everyone smiling for once. The ship gleamed under the Miami sun as we boarded this floating palace of glass and white steel. I inhaled the salty air, picturing lazy days by the pool and nights under the stars. I had always been the peacemaker, the one smoothing over my parents' sharp edges or Lila's endless need to one-up me. I thought this trip would be different, a fresh start, but the cracks showed quickly. At the welcome buffet, my parents speared shrimp and said, "Well, Ethan, this must feel good," showing off that fancy new paycheck. Their tone was light, but their eyes glinted with something sour. Lila piled her plate high while Mark chimed in, "Yeah, Mr. Big Shot, footing the bill like a champ." I brushed it off with a laugh, chalking it up to their usual teasing. Uncle Tom just sipped his iced tea, watching quietly from the sidelines. By evening, as the ship pulled away from shore, I stood on deck, the horizon stretching endless and golden. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this could work. Maybe they finally see me as more than just the family ATM. I had no idea how wrong I was. The first full day on the cruise started with promise. Sunlight glinted off the waves, and a warm breeze rustled the deck chairs. I stretched out by the pool, sipping a mango smoothie, determined to soak in every second of this escape. But the peace didn't last. At dinner that night in the ship's upscale steakhouse, the mood shifted. Lila and Mark ordered a round of top-shelf whiskey and an extra platter of lobster tails, grinning like kids raiding a candy store. When the waiter set the bill down, a hefty $320, Lila slid it toward me with a lazy shrug. "You've got this, right, bro? You're the one with the fat bonus." My grip tightened on my fork. I had already paid for most of the trip. We had agreed to split the extras. My voice was steady, but inside, irritation simmered. Mark rolled his eyes. "Come on, Ethan, don't be so uptight. It's just money." My parents, slicing into their steak, added, "He's always been particular like that. You'd think he'd loosen up with all he's got now." The table laughed, except for Uncle Tom, who kept his gaze on his plate, lips pressed thin. The next morning, it got worse. Lila and Mark strutted back from the ship's excursion desk, bragging about booking a private yacht tour. $600 for the pair. "Put it on the family tab," Lila said, clapping my shoulder. "You're the anchor here, man." My jaw clenched. "There's no family tab. You pay your own way." Lila scoffed. "What's the big deal? You're loaded now." My parents overheard from their lounge chairs and called over, loud enough for nearby passengers to turn. "Ethan, stop being so stingy. It's embarrassing." By lunch, the jabs had sharpened. Mark accidentally spilled his cocktail on my shirt, giggling, "Oops. Guess you can afford a new one." My parents muttered to a waiter about their cheap son who couldn't treat his family right, their voices carrying across the deck. I caught the pitying glances from strangers and felt my face burn, not with shame, but with a slow-boiling anger. I had dropped thousands to make this trip happen, and they were painting me as the villain for setting boundaries. That afternoon, I retreated to the ship's library, needing space. Uncle Tom found me there, sliding into the seat across from me. "They're testing you," he said quietly, his gray eyes sharp. "Always have." I nodded, staring out at Blaird as I boarded the ferry, finding a seat by the rail. The ocean stretched out vast and indifferent, mirroring the emptiness I felt. Not sadness, not even anger, just a clean break. I had given them everything, and they had spat it back in my face. As the mainland drew closer, my phone buzzed. A text from Uncle Tom, "They'll regret this. Trust me." I stared at it, a faint smirk tugging at my lips. I didn't know what he meant, but something told me the cruise wasn't over for them yet. Not by a long shot. I landed back in Miami late that afternoon. The ferry ride was a blur of salt spray and quiet reflection. I had expected to feel humiliated, cast off like a nuisance, but instead, a strange relief pulsed through me. The condo I rented felt like a sanctuary. No snide comments, no entitled demands, just silence. I tossed my bags by the door and sank into the couch, replaying Uncle Tom's text, "They'll regret this. Trust me." His words lingered, a promise I couldn't quite decipher. I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 days later, my phone pinged with a voicemail from Tom. His voice was calm, almost amused. "Ethan, you should see this mess. I'm making it right. Don't you worry." Curious, I called him back, catching him mid-cruise on a spotty ship signal. "What's going on?" I asked. He chuckled low and conspiratorial. "Let's just say they're learning what family really means. It started small." Tom had misheard Lila's request for a luxury catamaran excursion in Nassau, booking them instead on a rickety fishing boat swarming with flies. "Oh, I thought you said authentic experience," he told them, blinking innocently as my parents swatted at mosquitoes and Mark gagged on the bait stench. Lila grumbled about the downgrade, but Tom just shrugged. "It's cheaper. You're always saying we should save, right?" I could almost hear the smirk in his recounting. Then came the spa fiasco. My parents had raved about the ship's 5-star massage package, a treat they'd planned for days. Tom, tasked with confirming it, forgot to lock in the slots. When they showed up, the spa was booked solid. He steered them to a sketchy shoreside shack instead, peeling paint, a flickering neon sign, and a masseuse who smelled like stale cigarettes. "It's more adventurous this way," Tom insisted, watching my parents storm out with towels still draped over their shoulders. Lila snapped at him, "This is ridiculous." Tom's reply was pure gold, "Oh, you mean like kicking Ethan off a trip he paid for?" His real masterpiece came at dinner. The family had bragged to other passengers about their tight-knit dynamic, conveniently leaving out my exile. Tom waited until they were mid-story, my parents spinning a tale about ungrateful people, before cutting in loud and clear. "You mean like Ethan, the one who covered most of this cruise before you sent him packing?" Heads turned, forks paused midair. Lila's face turned red, Mark sputtered into his wine, and my parents hissed, "Tom, not here." But Tom just smiled, sipping his water. Just keeping it honest. By day 5, the family was unraveling. Tom's accidental overbooking of a shore tour left them crammed into a sweaty van with broken AC while he opted for a solo walk and sipped iced coffee in the shade. He texted me a photo of them squabbling by the dock, Lila gesturing wildly, my parents fanning themselves with a crumpled map. "They're miserable," he wrote. "Karma's got a front row seat." I leaned back, grinning at the image. I hadn't asked Tom to do this, hadn't even hinted at revenge, but he'd seen the betrayal clearer than I had. His quiet chaos was a gift, turning their paradise into a petty hell. I typed back, "You're a legend." His reply was instant, "Not done yet. The cruise still has 2 days left." I knew Tom wasn't bluffing. Whatever he had up his sleeve next, I was content to sit back and let it unfold. Far from the ship but closer to freedom than ever, I spent the next day piecing my routine back together, work emails, a gym session, a quiet dinner alone. Tom's updates had turned the cruise into a distant, darkly funny sideshow. But I wasn't prepared for the next twist. Late that evening, my phone lit up with my parents' names. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won out. "Ethan," they said, their voices tight with urgency. "Mara's injury for $1,000 and charged me $2,400 for a suite upgrade." Unreal. His reply came fast, "Bastards. I've got this." I didn't doubt him, but the audacity made me pace my condo, replaying every moment, my parents' crocodile tears, Lila's entitlement, Mark's sneers. I had given them a dream trip, and they had repaid me with deceit. The money stung, sure, but the malice behind it cut deeper. By nightfall, I had cooled enough to strategize. I could dispute the charges, maybe even press fraud, but Tom's promise held me back. He was still on board, a wild card in flip-flops, and his last text echoed in my mind, "Not done yet." Whatever he was cooking up, it hit them where it hurt harder than they had hit me. I poured a beer, settled onto my balcony, and stared at the city lights. The cruise was their battlefield now, and I trusted Tom to turn it into their reckoning. For the first time in days, I felt the scales tipping my way. The cruise's final day dawned bright over Miami. But for my parents, Lila, and Mark, the return was a descent into chaos. I woke to a flurry of texts from Tom, his play-by-play unfolding like a revenge novel. He had saved his best for last. As the ship docked, the family shuffled to baggage claim, blurry-eyed from his relentless sabotage, crowded vans, botched spa days, public callouts. But Tom had one more card to play. He had misfiled their luggage tags during a shore stop, rerouting their suitcases to a port in the Bahamas. They stood empty-handed, clutching only carry-ons as a harried staffer shrugged. "It'll take days to retrieve them," he said. My parents' faces crumpled, and Lila swore under her breath. Then came the real kicker. At the terminal, my parents reached for their purses to call a cab. Nothing. Lila patted her pockets, empty. Mark dumped his bag on a bench, makeup and receipts spilling out, but no wallet. Somewhere in the chaos of a crowded Nassau market, where Tom had wandered off during our last outing, they had been pickpocketed. Cash, cards, IDs, gone. I got the full scoop from Tom's gleeful call as he sipped coffee in the shuttle line. "They're stranded, kid. No money, no way home." Guess who they called? My phone buzzed minutes later. My parents' voices cracked through the static. "Ethan, we're in trouble. Lost everything, wallets, passports. You've got to drive down here, please." Lila cut in, gruff and desperate, 3 hours, man. You owe us this after bailing on the trip." I let the irony hang. Their entitlement was thick as ever. Mark's whine pierced the background. "Do it, Ethan." I pictured them, sweaty and disheveled, glaring at each other in the terminal, and felt a slow, satisfying burn. "You're not welcome here," I said, my tone ice cold, echoing my parents' dismissal from that breakfast table. My parents gasped. "Ethan, this isn't a game." I hung up, the line going dead before Lila could bark another demand. They turned to Tom next, but he was already gone, the shuttle rolling toward his hotel, first-class ticket home booked on his own dime. He texted me a selfie, grinning with a mimosa. Left them to stew. Enjoy the silence. I did. My condo hummed with calm, the city skyline glinting beyond my window. They had spent a week leeching off me 60% of the cruise, a sweet upgrade, a fake sob story, and now they were reaping the fallout. Tom's chaos had stripped their veneer, exposing them to the strangers they bragged to on board. I imagined my parents' frantic calls to the bank, Lila pacing, Mark sulking. No funds, no IDs, just each other to blame. They had expected me to swoop in, the beautiful son and brother, but I was done being their safety net. Later, I checked my phone. No follow-ups, no grumbling voicemails. They had found a way to squirm out, maybe a loan from a pitying tourist or a begrudging call to a distant cousin. I didn't care. The silence was my victory, their desperation my reward. Tom's final text sealed it, "Karma's a hell of a cruise director." I laughed, pouring a coffee as the sun dipped low. The trip I had bankrolled had become their prison, and I was free, 3 hours away, untouchable. Whatever came next, they would hollow. I didn't authorize anything, I was kicked off. The rep stammered an apology, but the damage was done. I hung up, fury surging. They had planned this, my parents' fake emergency, Lila's upgrade scam, all while Tom turned their trip into a circus. It wasn't enough to exile me, they had looted my wallet on the way out. I texted Tom, they charged $5,800 to my card after I left. Fraud. His reply was instant, those leeches hit them hard. I weighed my options, dispute the charges, file a report, or let it go. The money stung, but the betrayal burned hotter. I dialed my parents, skipping pleasantries when they picked up. "You put $5,800 on my card." "Explain." Their voices turned syrupy, bad actors caught mid-scene. "Oh, Ethan, that must be a mix-up. You left so fast, we figured you'd cover the rest. Family account, you know?" I snapped, "You stole from me. Wire it back by morning, or I'm reporting fraud." My parents gasped, theatrical and shrill. "You'd sue your own parents over a little mistake?" I gritted my teeth. "It's not a mistake. It's theft. Fix it." They huffed, "You're overreacting. You've got the cash. What's the big deal?" That was it, the last straw. "By 8 a.m. or I call the bank," I said, my voice flat, and hung up. I barely slept, adrenaline buzzing. At 7:58 a.m., my account pinged, $5,800 deposited. No note, no apology, just cold, begrudging compliance. I checked anyway, confirming it cleared, then blocked my parents' numbers. Lila followed, already silent since the terminal plea. Mark's social media lit up hours later with a vague post about toxic people and learning who's real. I snorted, the irony was rich. Tom called that afternoon, cackling when I filled him in. "They thought they'd outsmart you. Priceless." I managed to grin. "They almost did." He hummed, satisfied. "Not with me around." We met for beers that weekend, clinking bottles on his patio. "To cutting the cord," he toasted, eyes twinkling. "To cutting the cord," I echoed, the weightlifting. The money was back, the ties severed. My parents' victim act, Lila's bravado, Mark's whining, all irrelevant now. I had paid for their cruise, but they had paid in pride. It was over, and I was lighter for it. Weeks passed, and I settled into a rhythm: workouts, nights with no drama. The cruise felt like a fading nightmare, its sting dulled by Tom's antics and my clean break. Then an email jolted me awake one morning from Riverfront Apartments. Subject: urgent tenant payment issue. It was my parents' landlord, a name I vaguely recognized from years past. "Hello, Ethan," it read. "You're listed as the financial contact for your parents and Lila's lease. They're 4 months behind, $5,600 owed. Eviction looms. Please call." I stared, incredulous, then laughed, a sharp, disbelieving bark. They'd done it again. I dialed the landlord, a gruff person named Pete who picked up fast. "Ethan, good to hear from you. Your folks said you'd cover the rent. True?" My voice was steel. "No, they lied. I'm not their guarantor." Pete sighed, papers rustling. "They swore you'd step in." "Gave me your email, said your family." I cut in, "Not my problem. They're on their own." Pete hesitated. "So, no help?" "They're out next week without payment." I leaned back, the absurdity almost amusing. "Correct. Start the eviction." Pete muttered something about families and hung up. I didn't call my parents or Lila. I didn't need to. I could picture it, my parents frantic, packing, Lila cursing, Mark complaining, all while they scrambled for a lifeline I wouldn't throw. They pinned their last hope on me, banking on guilt or duty, but I was done playing savior. I texted Tom, they listed me as rent backup. Facing eviction. Told the landlord no. His reply was a string of laughing emojis. Perfect. Let them sink. I grinned, imagining their panic. 4 months behind, no cash after the cruise drained them, and now no home. I didn't check on them. I didn't care where they landed. They built this mess from the ship to the shore.